Good morning. Are you ready to have some coffee? Today we're going to talk about coffee, which started off, at least in America, where I am, back in the days of the colonies as a fad to avoid taxation by the king. And politically, it became the choice drink of all American patriots to drink coffee. And I have been a lifelong drinker of coffee since I was a teenager. And nowadays I can't really drink it. Ever since I stopped smoking cannabis, it's difficult for me to take all of the caffeine, and I've discovered that it's actually really bad for my digestive system as well. Just too harsh. But, you know, I think it's important that for those of you that do drink it, I pass on at least what knowledge I have. These are my two preferred methods. Number one, we have the Moka Pot. This is developed by the Italians because they had a very low quality type of coffee bean that was available to them. So in order to get the sweetest product out of their coffee possible, they developed a method of forcing steam through the coffee, and that's how we got espresso. This is just the most basic version of doing that, as opposed to having the big fancy machine with a boiler and the bar to be able to pull exactly the perfect amount of steam that you want through your coffee. But this is an all stainless steel option, and this is important for a couple of reasons, because you'll often see this as the other kind of Moka Pot, Mocha Express by Via Latte. I started off using these, and once I melted the handle off of one because I left it on the stove. So never get one with a plastic handle. I mean, of course, you should be banning all plastic from your kitchen anyway. It doesn't belong in the kitchen. It should not be there. It's only put there by price point corporatism to try and save money. The other reason you really don't want this is it's aluminum, and that is eventually going to give you early onset dementia. So I've gotten rid of all of mine like this. I used to have a few. Believe me, my obsession with coffee is kind of extreme, but not nearly as extreme as some people I know. So this works basically by, you have the receptacle here where the coffee goes at the end. You have the funnel that holds it, and then this just holds the water. And you fill this up to just below the line of the pressure relief valve. And you can get replaceable gaskets. These things have to be replaced every 6 months to a year, so depending on how often you use the machine. My other all-time favorite best option is this. And this is the French press. This is a nice steel one because the glass ones you often see by Bodum, usually by Bodum, but by other people too, are susceptible to breaking. They're usually very thin wall glass and very unreliable. I don't see the point in having a kitchen appliance that is so easily broken and needs to be replaced frequently. Another common technique, which I find makes a terrible coffee, but some people like it, you know, to each their own taste, is the filter method. So Bodum also makes one that's glass, looks like an hourglass, and you have a filter on the top that holds the coffee, and then you pour over water into the top of it. To my mind, or to my taste buds, that makes a very acidic, displeasing cup of coffee. But some people are into that, and some people consider pour over to be the best way to go forward. So everybody has their own preferences on this. Another option that I've got to put out here that I would recommend you avoid is the classic Mr. Coffee type dripper. This just makes terrible coffee, and only go with this if you're like in a house rental or a hotel and that's all they've got and you need some coffee. But otherwise, I don't see why you would want to use this. It's hard to clean, it makes poor coffee, it's expensive. People get stuck in a certain way of doing things, I think, and that's just how they do it. So I'm sure some people like this sort of thing. I mean, this is a programmer, it has a keep warm option, but I mean, really, why? It's all plastic. It holds onto all kinds of odors. It's just really unpleasant. So I would always recommend that you grind your coffee as you're about to use it. You know, there were while I did that for most of my life, there were quite a few years where I just realized that I am way too tired and exhausted in the morning to grind coffee before I make coffee. So I just bought ground coffee for a while, but really the best way to go is to grind your own coffee. And where I'm staying right now, there's not a coffee grinder, but there is a blender, so that's what I used. A lot of people say you should use 2 tablespoons or 1 ounce of coffee per 6 ounces of water. That's pretty extreme. That's a lot of coffee. Let's see if I can figure out how much I'm going to be using here. Zero that out. Okay, so that's about 2 ounces. And to me, this is about twice as much as I would probably need for either one of these coffee makers. Haven't used this in a while, so I just washed the dust out of it. Anyway. Now, if you fill this thing all the way up and then tamp it down, that's going to give you an intense espresso, and a lot of people like that. Generally, with this maker you want a fine grind, whereas this maker you want a coarse grind. And also the Moka Pot will be slightly less efficient than the French press, because when the coffee grinds just sit in the hot water, as they do with the French press, you get a stronger brew. So I'm going to use about half of this, which, let's see, to fill that up, let's see how much that is. I had 2 ounces in here. And I find it's useful to use weights instead of volumes. For things like this, it's just much more precise. It took me a long time to get a kitchen scale, and it's really a shame because it's an essential piece. So that's about 1.2 ounces, or in real measurements, that was 22 grams, so it's about 60 grams of coffee. we'll get that going. And I think this will be a good example for how much more efficient the French press is. Get this going as well. So this just uses a stainless steel filter to keep the grinds out of the water once you're finished. This is just a double-walled welded stainless item. Very durable in comparison to a glass item. Also, you notice this produces a lot more coffee. This produces, I would say, about 10 ounces. It's roughly, or 12 ounces. It's roughly 1 large cup of coffee, although it's specifically classified as a 9-cup espresso maker. So 9 tiny espresso cups. And then this, our remaining 22 grams of coffee, or 0.77 ounces. One thing here. To me, that looks like it's not quite enough, so let's measure out some more. Okay, so that's about another 26 grams. So total of 48 grams, about 50 grams. That sounds perfect to me, 48 grams. Or in ancient units, that would be 92 ounces. So it's about an ounce and 3/4. Yeah. 0.92 plus 0.77 would be 1.69, so 1.69 ounces for, and this is a 1.5 liter coffee maker. It's gonna get loud as we have so much going on. Ready to get super caffeinated? I bet this is just making you dying for a cup of joe. Which one will finish first? Now, for adding the water to this, there's 2 steps. You want to add a small amount of water first to let the grounds bloom, basically to let them start to expel the air they're holding and absorb the water. And then once they've done that, then you can start to add more water to it. So I'm just getting the kettle going. The coffee I'm using today is a nice organic Sumatra single source. I tend to prefer the Pacific Islands for coffee sources as they're very low acidic, but that's just my taste. Some people really like the high acidity options that you'll get with like the Ethiopian options. I find another nice middle ground is Colombian or other Central American coffees. sound it makes when it's done. And now it's starting to push out air, so you know it's all done. Me, I could never stand sugar in my coffee, but some people, that's your thing, that's fine. Although I was always never able to drink it black very well. It always upset my stomach that way. So I'm going to add a little heavy cream. You can also do milk. First the heavy cream. It's going to get your cholesterol up. But who? No, I don't really care. It's just so delicious. Now the water's boiled for the French press. Put just a little bit of water in there, so it's maybe, a fifth of the way full. Agitate. Let the coffee grounds bloom. I should be showing you detail of this, I suppose. I don't have an overhead camera, unfortunately. But you can kind of see that there's all kinds of air coming out of the grounds. It's all frothy. And now it's filled up to about there. Insert the plunger. And then I usually let this sit for about 4 to 5 minutes to let it all soak in. And also during this time, the grounds will continue to expel air and start to sink to the bottom. And once they sink to the bottom, it's much easier to hit the plunger down. If you feel resistance as it goes down, that's okay, don't push too hard. Slowly down. Not too much pressure. If you get too much pressure, you have to pull back like that to kind of clear out the bubbles. And then you can push down again much more easily. Isn't that lovely? Yes. And this one, I think I'm going to put a little milk. Just out of coffee. I have a little bit of butter left in the cream thing, so I'm going to add a little hot coffee to that. Agitate out. And that will get some of the cream in there. I hope that was interesting. Coffee seems like a really basic thing to me, but that's because I've been doing it since I was a wee lass. Anyway. I prefer green tea these days, and I'll do an episode on tea coming up. Thanks. May you eat well and be well. May you be blessed. May you have unconditional love for all beings. May you be completely at peace. I'm Valentine. I'll see you in another video. Aloha.